Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Family Life. Today, the Men's Ministry Department is being featured. As host today, we have Reuel Field, and he's the Men's Ministry leader. Then we have Jesse Field, which part of the Family Life team, and myself, Edward Smith, as Family Life coordinator. Our guest today is none other than Dr. Pastor Richard Campbell, and I will read a little bit about him. Richard P. Campbell is an ordained pastor, presently serving at the First Seventh-day Adventist Church of Paterson in Paterson, New Jersey. He's now celebrating his 38th year of pastoral ministry. That's a long time. He is a licensed professional counselor and holds a doctoral degree in human and social service. He is the author of 2 books, including The Strength of Male Tears. He is the husband of 1 and the father of 2. Mercy, mercy. Today, Pastor, we brought you in here because your book really grabbed my attention. The Strength of Male Tears. And the reason is because we have grew up all our life to hear stuff like be a man, and every time we hear this, it tells us that we should hide our emotions. Right? And not only that, but expressing any hint of feelings oftentimes leaves us to believe that we are weak. As men, the moment we express our feelings, it leads us to think that we are weak. But here we are today talking about a book, The Strength of Male Tears. How do we pull strength from tears? Pastor, can you unpack that for us?
The pulling of strength from tears is actually not the foundation. The reality is we are talking about male emotions. We are talking here about the reality that men are trained to deny their emotional truth. If you are trained to deny your emotional truth, you are trained to deny your personhood. So the culture demands that we live less than who we are. To be a man, you've got to hide your inner personhood. That is why we are so comfortable talking superficially, because that's a measure of a protective garb. But tears are actually a symbol or a metaphor for a person being comfortable with themselves, comfortable to share deeply. And if through your life you are unable to share deeply, through your life you have robbed yourself of humanity in an effort to grasp after false manhood. I may have said more than I should in my first statement, but you just set me on fire. So
there's a lot to unpack.
Right back on you.
Go ahead, Reuel.
So there's a lot to unpack in that intro there. I know I remember growing up hearing the song, real men don't cry, right?
Right.
And because of that, because of hearing that, and Pastor Campbell, you sound like, are you from the great island of Jamaica?
No, sir.
Not far from there, just south in a place named Trinidad.
Trinidad, I knew, so we all, having that commonality of the Caribbean, that coming from the Caribbean, you had to be tough. Being a man, being tough, not showing any emotion, not showing any fear, and definitely not crying, right? And now we've left our motherland and we're here in a different society. And in this society, in this culture that we're in, especially the day and age that we live in, as men, there's so many things that are put on us. There's so much burden. There's, you have family, you have life, you have society itself. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes we need a hug. Sometimes we just want to scream. So this, I think, there's your work, your book. It's perfect for the time that we're in right now, because it's letting us know as men, that we could let that emotion out. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to unpack those tears. And I know Jesse will have a lot to say on that issue also.
Oh, yeah. First of all, I just want to thank you, Pastor Campbell, for writing such a book, right? Because I can imagine a book where men are actually accepting their emotions, right? And actually using their emotions and saying that it's okay, right, to show vulnerability. I can see that even being controversial, perhaps in the church, right? Especially as we as men being the head of our households, the head of our churches, and the head of our communities. And it's interesting because for us as men, we're the ones that everyone lean on. Our wives lean on us, our children look up to us. But the question is, who do we lean on when we might need that emotional support, right? Who do we lean on when we feel vulnerable? So for you just to have the vision to write such a book, I applaud you for doing that. And I'm curious, what was the inspiration behind you to write such a profound book?
What should I say? Having lived for some time, having seen what I've seen, knowing my own self, having done some reading into historical history of tears, also, and this is not the least, as many of you have been a Bible student from my earliest years. I grew up in the church. Mm-hmm. And there was a stark contrast I saw between the Jesus I met in the Bible and how I hear Christian men talk, and what I see in the general culture. Mm-hmm. Because I met a Jesus who would cry. I met a strong man, Paul, who cried. Jeremiah, talking about strong men in the Bible. David, who knocked down Goliath. Oh, my soul, why art thou disquieted in me? Hope thou in God. Elijah, who could say, I just don't want to live anymore. Job, who could say, cursed be the day. Guys who knew pain, and they expressed pain. Mm-hmm. And here comes Jesus. Moved so many mountains in his life, and now he was crumbling in Gethsemane. And he tells, look at self-disclosure, right? My soul is exceeding sorrowful.
Mercy.
Even unto death.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I feel so sad deep down that I could die. I feel like I could die. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying to myself, when I think about how we look at the typical male versus the typical female, right? And culturally, over time, what we have bought into, Jesus there sounded more feminine than masculine. That was not a man talking. And if you look all through the Bible and hear how men poured out their soul.
Yes, sir.
That is not the kind of man I grew up seeing around me, so to speak, or being paraded around as genuine manhood. Something was not consistent. Bottom line, I came to the reality that among men of the church, we deny our biblical emotional heritage.
Mercy.
Wow.
And that was enough for me to sit up and take note and to say, this is something that needs to be shared. We need to wake up, because truth of the matter is, and what we may not be willing to face is, if I remain emotionally stunted, I could only rise so far spiritually.
Yes, sir.
Mercy. Mercy.
Wow. Wow.
Mercy.
We're
So,
talking holistic personhood here.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, why am I saying that? Because in my spiritual experience, if I don't learn how to share deeply, I am not able to do the work that is necessary to get to the point where God has called me. If I'm not emotionally honest, and to preserve my manhood, I destroy my personhood. My manhood must come before my personhood. That's not how God has created us.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Woo!
You don't have to be a man, just be a person. The manhood will come. Don't fight it.
So, Pastor Campbell, so are you saying that because we as men, this piece of us, our emotions, right? Because we all have emotions, and to say that I don't get angry or I don't cry, it means that you're not human, right? Because God gave us these tears to use, right? Yeah. So for us as men to not acknowledge maybe the vulnerable aspect of us, or to maybe force ourselves not to cry, that we're denying an essential part of who we are as men. And it sounds like we're doing a disservice, not only to us, but to our significant others and to our children.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
Well said.
So let me get to a place of in the home, you have male and female, husband and wife, and oftentimes in a relationship when there are conflict, the men are the one who stonewalled first. We shut down. Would you say, Doctor, that this has something to do with the fact that we are afraid of attaching emotion to what is it that we want to verbalize, and the fact that we're being judged on these things, hence the reason why we shut down?
That is often the case, and the next part of this, which is a totally different a workshop or whatever by itself, is this. Again, as I said before, as men, we are comfortable just at the superficial level. Because we have been taught, right, whether deliberately, whether indirectly, but emotions, we are not about emotions. A man has got to take care of business, right?
Take charge.
Kinesthetic expressions, right? So here is it. You and the lady are talking, right? And let's say you come through the house. How was your day? Now, automatically, I may just say, it was good. Or question like, how you feeling? I'm cool. Now, I'm sure it's a man invented that saying, not a woman.
Right.
Because we do not talk the language of emotions. We talk concrete words for feeling, right? So I found myself doing that in when I was doing counseling training to be a counselor, and I was asking questions. I was more content laden than anything else. And asking questions concerning emotions, but not using the words. In other words, I was talking one language which was contrary to the females around me who I was trying to counsel, right? So I was not asking questions like, okay, so tell me, how are you feel as you talk about it in this moment? Tell me, express your feelings to me. That's not the road I would go down, because my take was, okay, there's a problem to be solved. Let me solve it. So I want to know the who, what, where, when, and let's tackle this thing.
Right.
And as you would see in the book, I mean, I did look from a personal point of view in my first chapter, that it was a person, one of the supervisors training me, half my age, who pointed out that I had a problem expressing emotions. And, you know, I had to work through the situation, let her know, you know, I have been helping people as a pastor all my life. It's as if I have pushed my emotions aside to help people with theirs. So I've never really processed. I've never expressed, articulated. So here are two people talking, male and female. Why would the male want to cop out earlier than the female? Because the room is too hot. She's trying to take me to a place where I don't belong. She's trying to remind me of who I am. I cherish my male superiority.
Yes.
That's something internalized, you see? And so that's part of the problem, in that if we've never been to a certain place, if we are trained to deny, it's like, you know, so I say, you say, how are you? I say, I'm cool. And you as a lady ask me, no, tell me, how do you really feel?
Right.
Simple question like that could throw us off as males.
Right.
Because between you and me, Edward, if I tell you I'm cool, you are not going to press it. That's 1,000 words to you.
Yes. Yes.
But it's not so to a female.
You know, here the great thing about the book, Pastor, and just the title alone, right? The strength of when you talk about the strength of the male tier, right? You're talking about as opposed to the strength of a man's tier, right? Now you're looking at genotype as opposed to phenotype, right? When we talk about genotype and you're talking about male, you are a male, and you have characteristics genotypically that make you who you are, right? Now, the phenotypic, you know, expression of a man, right, causes us to hold back. But now, so one thing that I always ask is now, in how do we now define? We already know what a male is. As much as society, you know, try to change what malehood is, you know, your genetics, you can't change that, right? So now when we're looking at the strength of how do you define manhood? Because that, I think nowadays, that has been lost, right? And in different individuals define it different ways. So looking at putting a wrap around this book, right? How do you define manhood?
Well, that's a good question you ask. Frankly, in the book, I have not defined manhood. I have talked about characteristics, you know, of the male, but not defined manhood, because personhood is more critical than defining myself along the lines of gender. And that is where we have got to be cautious. So to me, it's more hands-on if we actually talk concretely to males in terms of what is expected of a man, you know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But just conceptualize it, you know, just makes it ethereal, esoteric out there. It's just conceptual. So I have not gone in that direction.
Okay. Now, Pastor Campbell, you spoke about there's many examples in the Bible of men who express their emotions, right? One individual you spoke about was Job, and we're familiar with Job. Anything bad that could have possibly happened to a man, Job was that man, right? Think about it. He lost his riches. He lost his children in one fell swoop. He lost just about every bit of his health. And the thing about Job, which I'm partial to Job, I appreciate Job. Job was not perfect, but he was honest. And Job wailed. He wailed to God. He just didn't whisper or casually talk to God. He pleaded with God. You know, he was, no one else could get where Job was coming from. His friends, they came in, they couldn't help him. They went about it totally the wrong way. His wife, who unfortunately suffered the trials that he suffered, she couldn't even understand him. But the thing is, Job had a connection with God. And I think when we talk about as men, what makes men truly men is when we have that intimate connection with God. Because I think as a man, you can't make it in this world unless you have a connection with God. Because the reality is, like Job, sometimes your friends are not going to get it. They're not going to understand you. You know, sometimes your wife, the person that walks with you every single day, may not get it. But the thing is, God gets it. So I think it's critical for us as men to kind of change the narrative of what makes men men. I think it's quite the opposite what the world says. The world may say that a man is a man who can do it by himself. But we know, as the Bible clearly states, a man is someone who has a deep, intimate connection with God Almighty, right? So maybe just looking at that, a man has an intimate, personal, deep connection with God.
And you see, with that, I think about Job's fragility.
Okay.
Job was willing to, you know, when Job felt strong, he felt strong. You know, he rebuked the woman who wanted him to curse God. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh, blessed be. But then as time passed and the reality strikes and his humanness, you know, and his male friends, his homies come around. And he begins to express his deep feelings. And they find that he is going beyond his limit because he's talking out of his pain. At the end of the day, yes, God gave him some correction because there are some things Job said where he went overboard. But you see, God told his friends that you need to ask Job to pray for you because the purpose for which God allowed them to go is not what they sought to fulfill. It connects me with something I said on Sabbath Gone, Brother Smith, and something that I related to on Sabbath. It's kind of slipping me now. It will come back to me. But I think I said something about we have to know the difference between when we are there as God's representative and the person's ally, right? And oftentimes we would want to think that if we hold up and we show strength, that means we have a connection with God. But fact is, as you rightly suggested, Dr. Fields, the way Job expressed himself, you could see he had a connection with God. There were things he didn't understand, but he was willing to share deeply. And it's only when you share from within that
Absolutely.
you are able to get help. And that's a challenge we have as men, where we, I like to say, we could go to our graves in loneliness because we do not share deeply.
Yes,
So,
sir.
let me ask you, Pastor, how can we do a paradigm shift, because whenever we show emotions, it is equated as with weakness. How can we show emotions and at the same time remain strong as men?
Okay, well, I hear you saying two things. What society expects of us, and of course have expected over time, and what could we do to change that paradigm? Well, the first thing in terms of what can we do to change that paradigm is to have programs like this, is to have situations like this where younger men can hear, the generation coming up can hear that what we have displayed to you before, we were not keeping it real. They must hear that over time and over centuries, men have been fakes. They must hear that there is no limit to the times and situations when someone is able to cry. And I know somebody in my household is going to help me to kill that noise out there, so we wouldn't be distracted. All right. Yeah, thank you. So what was I saying here? So they need to see. Now, look at this. Men have coverage to cry in maybe about 4 different situations where you can cry and preserve your manhood. If it's tears of patriotism,
Right.
that's male. You guys are into sports. If it's tears of triumph,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Even religious tears, you may have some coverage. As you hear the preacher make a call and you go up in tears, there is coverage for that, right? Tears of empathy, where someone is wounded and you embrace them and you feel for them. There is coverage for that. But there is not much more coverage for male tears. Okay, you understand the man crying his mom's funeral or whatever have you, but let that same man cry 2 weeks after.
Mercy.
There is a shelf life.
Yes.
Male tears, right? So we have to school by opening up in situations like this, opening up at the level of church. We also have to get back to the book and get back to the real Jesus, not the one that we've been trying to create in the 20th and 21st century, that goes totally awry from what it was like. Listen, in the times of Jesus. Now, okay, let's backtrack. Stoicism, that philosophy to not cry and to not show doubt and to not show curiosity and show a brave face, that sort of thing, right? From about the 3rd century BC into a few years into AD. So even during the time of Christ, there are many Grecians and Romans who were Stoics, right? Even at that point, the Christian church was saying, away with the Stoics. We must ensure that we are genuine in what we do. Our philosophy is found in a connection with God.
Yes,
and
sir.
it runs deep, way back to the time, in fact, in the time of Genesis, what? 13 out of 14 expression of tears in Genesis were male tears. So it goes way back. We have to, I'm saying, from a biblical a point of view, we have to look at it that way. We have to look directly at Jesus, and we have to compare us. We have to see that they have done a job on us. It is true that in almost every culture, through time, in almost every culture, male tears have been challenged, right? Give that. Yet at the same time, there is the paradox that running consistently with that, you look at a lot of literature where men's tears have also been celebrated. Okay, so the truth must be told, and we must tell our truth. If you limit, again, we must tell our young people, it's not strictly about tears. This is a caption, yes, the strength of male tears, but it runs deeper than just what you see in terms of what trickles down. It goes within. Brother Field, you're going to say something. I'm not taking over from Brother Edward Smith here.
No. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a little here, right? Because what now happens, right? Listen, Jesse, you have boys, right? You have a son.
Yes, sir.
How happens if we now, because there's a fine line in between there, because Jesse, your son comes home from basketball, they lose or something happens and he starts crying, like, you know, or if we have our male leaders, right, if they start shedding tears, right, I know it sounds good in the book, but how does now what even here as in the United States, we're looked at as a we're the superpower. What president was running around crying and shedding tears, you know? So how do we now balance? How do you delineate between when it's okay? Because I know you said there's those 4 reasons, right?
Yeah.
Delineate between, okay, strength, right? Strength in tears and pure weakness. And how do we develop in our sons? Listen, man, you lost that game. Try harder. Stop crying.
Now, Reuel, I'm laughing when you said that because I'm listening to Pastor and I'm like, okay, we're just being real. We as men, yeah, we should cry, but we shouldn't be crying all the time. That's just a piece of me just being honest, right? You ain't trying to cry all the time. I mean, my goodness. But I can remember even last week, my son, he was getting emotional over something, and I didn't say this, but the machismo in me, the male in me, is like, you know what, you gonna cry? I'm gonna give you something to cry about. That's just what fathers do, right? You know, like, what are you doing? Show that weakness. So I think it's that self-stigma, right? Because we as individuals, as men, we got our own personal work to do, right? Before we can ask a society to change. We as men in our own homes, as fathers and husbands, we got to do the paradigm shift ourselves. Right. But Pastor, I was really intrigued when you spoke about the importance of men getting help, right? Because I think, especially now with everything that's going on, everyone is looking to the men of the household for the answers, and rightfully so, right? Because we are leaders of our own home. But I think as men, a lot of us as men are suffering in silence. And I think a lot of us men are not getting help, right? Because what happens when your wife doesn't get it, right? Who do you turn to? And I think us as men, we have to start seeking out the help. It'd be great, you can get it from your friend or get it from a brother in the church, or maybe even getting that professional help. Like, what can we do as men to start making that change where it's acceptable to actually get help?
You know, that's an important question that you're asking. Again, as I said before, we have had over time we have been shaped, we have been trained, we have been told a job has been done on us. Listen, you talking about you as a father, and Brother Field, I'll be talking to your concern in a while if we have the time. The thing about it is, you look at some mothers. As I said, you talking about, look at some mothers. Many mothers have internalized the male concept of being male or manhood. So many a mother has told a son, I did not make or bear any sissy, right? You are not a sissy. Right? A mother telling a son she would authorize her female child to cry, but not the male. Why? Because you have to be a man. I am training you not for skirt, but for trousers. So what is the young man being told from very early? Not only men, but women are teaching. Because again, the male is the dominant gender or the dominant gender culture. So females have there's that internalized sense of inferiority, so to speak. And so you are male, you have to behave on a higher level, right? So that knee jerk comes sometimes from both parents. That's the teaching that sometimes we don't realize that's what is actually going on. Okay. Now, with that in mind, therefore, the young man, that boy whom his mother has told, dry your tears, what she has told him without realizing it, you need to, if you want to be a man, learn how to hide your emotions. Know how to keep that inside. Don't let me see that come out again. So when that young man is hurting in a relationship with his girlfriend, doesn't know who to talk to, he is in pain, she may be seeing somebody else and he doesn't know how to handle it, he can't go before his mom and cry out. He has to be a man. So Dr. Field, we come to the point where the man grows up, he loses his job, he can't take care of his family. So the question comes back, to whom should he go? Because he has to preserve his manhood. And that is where cutting edge organizations like Koto Family Life come in to set the pace where this is concerned, to ensure that men's ministry is actually a ministry to men. It is true. I have heard myself from a number of men, why do we need men's ministry? And often I want to say, the men who ask the question as a pastor, you know they need it most.
Yes, sir.
Right? Need it most. Why do we need? And we wouldn't sit down if we sit down for a tete-a-tete, it's to talk about the game, it's to talk about the politics, it's to dine in superficiality. But you in your men's ministry go deeper than superficiality, and no, all the brethren want is the dominoes. Don't go beyond that. You know. So yes, we need to set up deliberate structures wherever we are and try to rope men in, not waiting until they have a situation. But of course, at the same time, there's a challenge we have in that we need to encourage men to have at least one person they could call a buddy.
Right.
No. they could share deeply with.
Right. So question, Pastor, you know, and I always bring everything back to relationship, right? Because you know, everything is relational in my opinion. Maybe platonic relationship or intimate relationship, everything is relational because we have to learn how to relate to each other. So can we have a progressive relationship without being emotionally connected?
You're asking an important question here. To have a relationship that is going to be productive, where trust is built, and where there is some sense, where there is some sense of camaraderie, to do something like that, a relationship will get to a point where there is some measure of emotional connectivity.
Absolutely.
But of course, every relationship has to be controlled in its emotional input, right? And so there are relationships that will be, you'll have a bosom friend, another one may be an arm's length friend, another one will have to be a wavelength friend, different levels of emotional connectivity. And so it has to be managed. However, any genuine relationship will have some measure of emotionality in it.
Absolutely.
Now, Pastor, I have to ask, right? Because I know a lot of men in the church, in our church community, and just men probably, you know, jumped on and saw, you know, this session with us talking as men about men, and there are men, I'm certain, they were saying to themselves, whether they've mastered their emotions or they're struggling with dealing with their emotions, like, what action steps can a man take at this point moving forward to start to make that change, right? Because I think that's important for we as men to kind of leave from the session saying to ourselves, you know, I may not be perfect, but I can start doing A, B, or C to kind of get better. So what practical tips can you give us as men to finally make that bridge and start being that well-balanced, fully authentic men that we need to be for our families?
Okay, listen, I will start in the word, right? And I would tell such men, go back over the life of some of these powerful men who could model the male experience to you. All right, some of the names that we have called here, we've talked about the Jobs, we've talked about the Davids, we've talked about the Elijahs, we've talked about the Paul, even Peter. We've talked about Jesus, reflecting over especially the moments when they felt as if they were falling apart, and look at the tenor of their expressions. Do some meditation. Reflect on, as men, what was going on with them. What was going on within them. How they came through and still preserved their manhood. You know? So go back reflectively and meditative, because I think I'm mainly talking to a religious audience here. Meditate on that. In other words, get back to the word. Leave the 21st and the 20th century. Leave what you have seen and heard around. Leave this thing about who is a sissy and who is not. Go back to your religious, go back to your spiritual roots, right? And upon reflecting and meditating there, allow that to drive you to your knees before the Lord, to ask the Lord to remake you and to renew you and to lift you outside of and beyond the culture, because you do not want first to be known by your nationality, by your religion. You want to be known first as a child of God. And we
Yes, sir.
missed
Yep.
the boat as a gender over time. So you've got to go back there. Why you got to go back there? Because people are going to put stuff in your head that their father has told them, who heard it from his father, and so on. So it has got to be your spiritual foundation. You have got to see it as something for which you need divine help.
Yes.
Good. Now, that is an important foundation. And from there, I would say for individuals, well, not individuals, I would say for men, the language of, because I'm saying it's not just about tears. Don't start by aiming at tears.
Right.
Repeat that. All right? It's a concern about our emotions, right? So here is where we have to, especially those of us who have wives or girlfriends, we have to learn to speak universally. We have to learn to speak to them not just as if we're speaking to males. There are more females than males on planet Earth, I've been told, right? There are some better at the statistics than myself. So let's learn the language of the majority, all right? Let's begin to, with things that we say, let's see what we can say otherwise, say it differently. You could Google language of emotions. You could look at some emoticons or however you call them, and you know, and learn. Go back to scratch, right? I would even challenge men, if depending on the relationship you have with your woman, let her know that you are seeking to better your communication. You want to be able to talk her language. And therefore, I want you, when we are talking from time to time, let me know whether I'm talking over your head or whether I'm, you know, in other words, you have got to own up your fragility, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You got to get to the level of Job, all right? For us to get to the level of Jesus, sometimes we need some outside help, right? So it's all right if they could tell us that they don't understand, talk in the language of emotions. Don't just talk about fine and cool and those kind of non-emotive words. So because you need an ally in the females around you, right? Or the particular female in your experience. I mean, these are some of the things that I could actually think about that a person can, from a practical point of view. And none of these come easy. They are not things that we do naturally and automatically. So yes, it's going to take deliberate, it's going to take something intentional on our part, and we dare not feel judged or overly scrutinized when we have asked our woman to, you know, go through this with me.
Right.
And then you tell yourself, well, Pastor, if I do that, she will get the upper hand. You know what you're telling me when you say that? You're talking the language of false manhood.
Yes,
Right.
You're trying to preserve a position that God did not set for you. If you have to use that to preserve your manhood, you're saying something about God, and that is unfair to God.
Now, Pastor, to kind of just speak on that, we're talking about ego, right? And we as men in our ego, my goodness, like culturally, ego is like a major part of who we are. But when it comes to becoming a man in Christ and to be Christian men, we learn that our ego must die, right? And the Holy Spirit takes over.
Yeah.
Right. See,
Well
two
said.
things can't occupy the same space at the same time. You know, we as Christian men, we can't walk around with the ego in our heart and yet ask for the Holy Spirit to fill up our heart. Right. So something has to go. Right. So it's going to take denying of your ego. Because I'll be honest, I think for a lot of men, it's tough sometimes to apologize. Right. But, you know, there's a saying, you know, you can be right and wrong at the same time. And I think sometimes we as men, as head of our households, we do get concerned with being right, you know, because we're socialized to be that way, to always have the answer. But in the end, sometimes you're going to have to apologize. And I think as men, we have to get to that point where call a spade a spade. And like, if you're wrong, you say you're wrong, right? If you're scared, you say you're scared, and all that other good stuff. So I think one big piece is just denying of the ego and allowing the Spirit of God to take hold in us so we can actually do the right things when they are hard to do.
Yeah, you know, sometimes in my house, you know, and men, and not just men, women too, but since this is a man platform, we can be speaking to the man. You know, if you're not ready to hear the truth, don't ask the question. You know, sometimes I will go to my wife and I call it a pulse check or a temperature check. Mm-hmm. You know, babe, how am I doing? You know. And you know, if you open up that question, yes, be prepared for the answer, you know, because sometimes it's not the answer that you're looking for, and the answer is going to interfere with your ego, as you just stated, Jesse. You know, and if you have an ego problem, then don't ask that question. But I ask that question because I want to make sure that I am on the path, or if there's something that I need to do better, then I need to check that and look at that and get it in check. You know, so, you know, I will ask question and how am I doing? You know, is there anything that you think I need to improve on? You know, and you know, and I will just leave it right there and just wait for the answer. You know, and so if you are somebody who is, your ego can be easily bruised, then that's not a question you wanna ask.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one thing that you had said, Ed, is the fact that how do you develop genuine relationships and not be emotionally attached. I think that is one of the problems that we as males, we have a lot of fake relationships. We have a lot of relationships that we're in where we're not emotionally attached. And if you never get to the point where you can't cry around or you can't shed tears around people, that means it's a lot of falsehood. It's a lot of falsity there, right? And we feel like we have to keep putting on this facade. And I think that is the core of anything. Outside of the biblical aspect, we have to now in society, right? And when you look at where we are right now, we have to focus on building genuine relationships, right? Genuine relationships with our fellow brothers, that there is anything that we need. Yo, I know I can call this brother, you know, even in the church. A lot of times there's a lot of false relationships that develop in the church where, you know, hey, how you doing, brother? Man, great. I had a great week. Happy Sabbath. You know, we going around happy Sabbath and everybody, you know, and we're deep down inside, we're crying, you know. You know, we see the things that are going on in society. We're crying on the inside, but when we get together, we're still saying happy Sabbath, as opposed to saying, man, listen, I am stressed. I'm going through it. A lot of things that are happening, you know, is weighing down on me. And the tear itself, right? I think, you know, the great thing about it, Dr. Campbell, the tear itself it doesn't have to be a physical tear. It's just vulnerability. That's more of the tear than anything else. The mere fact that I'm able to be vulnerable with my brother, that's us shedding a tear right there.
Mercy.
To the point where we got these genuine relationships, and I thank God for some of the you know, the men, some of the guys in my life. because, you know, I know like one of my homeboys, I could call, if I'm going through something, I could call him and I could break down. And even I have, you know, female relationships with some of my female friends and even my sister, you know, and even my mom. I could say thank God for my mom also, where if I'm going through something, I could call and I could break down and cry. And we need to get back to the place where we can have those genuine relationships, not, you know, not something that just looks good, so that we can be vulnerable. There's strength in vulnerability.
Yeah.
You get like I'm in this group, this men group, and you know, we share some things with each other, but every time we get done, it's like I feel like I'm a lot stronger, and that's what we need now more than anything else.
Yeah, and I'm saying to men, look prayerfully to forge at least one relationship where you are vulnerable. If you can find another male that you can be vulnerable with, you may have to work through it prayerfully, because the zone you have come from is a zone of mistrust, is a zone of keeping people at an arm's length. So you may have to pray through this. You know, I am glad that there are men. I mean, we're talking about this, but there are many men who are well-rounded and who are emotionally honest. We have enough of them around to be able to serve as models. And I think it's really important for us as churches, wherever we are placed, to seek to have not just programming, but, you know, to find the basis for and situations where we can demonstrate. I'm not just saying demonstrate your tearfulness, but, you know, demonstrate your fragility. You know, there must be something that you could tell somebody about yourself that will give people a sense of your neediness,
right,
without you losing your so-called manhood. You know, you know, okay, you're playing a ping pong and you know, a guy beat you all over the place. You know, don't try to show that, you know, it's good thing I didn't practice before. Congratulate the man. You are great at the, you know, like that, and still preserve your image of being somebody. But again, as Dr. Fields had said, this thing about ego and dishonesty to preserve a so-called manhood, as you said, Brother Field, and not wanting to apologize just to preserve, again, the fake, Brother Field, the fake manhood. Listen, back in the Bible, when you talk about prayer warrior, you're talking male, right? Well, mainly. Today, when you talk about prayer warrior, right? Who you're talking about?
Women.
Female.
As you see, we live at the level of superficiality. If you live at the level of superficiality, you live at the level of formality.
Mercy.
And men need to preserve that, because systemically, we are the oppressors, if we want to look at it from a gender perspective. So it suits us for things to be preserved where they are, right? So our egos are an important protector of our turf, right? The formalism protects us, but you see, it robs us of honesty. It robs us of truth. And here's what I'll also say. If you are not emotionally honest, you really can't pray. I think I said that before at my opening statement.
Jesus. Say that again, Pastor.
Prayer without emotional honesty is formality. Finish for me, somebody.
Wow.
Yes,
So
sir.
we are good at formal prayers. We know to say the right things in the right places at the right time, and we may do a great job. That is where we are emotionally. And when you are that place emotionally, you could only rise so far spiritually.
Yes, sir.
So when most of us looking at for prayer warriors to rock heaven for us, we're looking for the sisters. The people who will burn the midnight oil.
Mercy.
Right?
No.
Oh.
Right? So if you can't cry, and remember with tears, I said, that is a metaphor for emotional
Yes.
honesty.
Yes.
If you can't cry, you can't pray.
Wow. Well,
To pray deep, to pray calls not just for superficiality, it calls for everything within. That is why prayer is not words. God does not hear words. God does not hear grammar. God does not hear English. God hears the cry.
Come on, sir. Yes, sir.
From
yes,
within, you've got
Yeah.
to go beyond the superficiality. You've got to get deeply personal to pray. And if you can't do that, and if you can't go that deeply for you, you think you could go that deeply for somebody else. I don't want someone praying for me who don't know pain and who don't know how to get on the floor and cry out to God with desperation.
Mercy, mercy. You know, doctor, oh my gosh, I wish we had 2 more hours, to continue, because this is so good, man. We are currently now 7 minutes over the time, but real quick, before we end, I need for you to tell the audience how can they get your book, because I think everyone needs to go out and get that book and read it. How can they get your book, Doc?
Well, they could go to Amazon. They could get on Amazon. They could get the hard copy, as well as they could get, what do you call it, the ebook on Amazon. You could get it either way. If you have to, you could get it directly from me, but going Amazon may be easier for you.
Right.
Same price either way.
Okay, and gentlemen, if you're listening, the name of the book is The Strength of Male Tears. You gotta go and get it. Because oftentimes we're told that men ought not to cry and stuff. Listen, Reuel,
how can they get in contact with you, Doctor?
Oh yes, how can they get in contact with you, Pastor?
It could be via email. It could be via phone number. Email R as in Richard, Campbell as in soup. I don't own the business, but R Campbell 256 at yahoo.com. R Campbell or Campbell 256 at yahoo.com. You could just do that. And,
or easy, or one of the easiest way also, you are the pastor of Patterson Seventh-day Adventist Church. They could just call the church and they should be able to get in touch with you. Listen, gentlemen, Reuel, I appreciate you, brother. Jesse, man, man, I love you, Jess. I love you from my heart, Jesse, man. I appreciate you. Dr. Campbell, thank you so much for coming on, man. I hope everyone has been blessed from this segment. And so on behalf of Family Life, I want to say thank everyone. And Family Life, we're signing out for now until next week, Sabbath at 3 p.m., same place, same time. God bless. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Amen.
Blessings, everyone.